Hey guys, I'm back here at the Yukon Transportation Museum, but now I've got Jenna with me. She's the director. Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to the Yukon Transportation Museum. Thanks for electrifying my day.
Right, so why do you have an electric charger at a museum for old transportation and old cars?
For old transportation. Well, isn't transportation energy networks, aren't they the most interesting thing ever? Whether it's hay for horses or fish for dog teams or moose for people, gas for cars, hey, maybe electricity for cars.
Right,
You
exactly.
never know.
You never know.
These evolving transportation networks are very interesting. So,
Okay.
we actually also meet a whole bunch of interesting people that happen to be hanging out at the charger, and you're
Cool.
one of them.
All right.
So thanks for coming.
Have you ridden an electric car?
I have,
Have you been in a
but
Tesla?
not a Tesla.
Okay. So do you know that Teslas, how fast they are with the torque and all that?
Well,
Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it.
Okay. Well, she's gonna go for a ride. Do you wanna go for a ride?
Let's go find out.
Okay, we're gonna go find out.
Awesome.
All right. Like if I want to pass somebody
Yeah.
and I want to get going, I can go.
Awesome.
You want to feel like from zero what it's like?
Yeah.
You ready?
There's another guy.
Oh, This thing you see here, this massive piece of machinery, look at it compared to the Tesla. See,
Well, you got that for scale.
yeah.
You got me for scale. I'm quite tall too.
What is this that we're looking at?
Well, this is LCC-1, Logistical Cargo Carrier number 1. It's a LeTourneau land train. It was meant to supply the stations along the DEW line, the distant early warning line,
Okay.
during the Cold War. This is a Cold War vehicle. Along the North Coast was a series of these distant early warning
North Coast.
stations. The North Coast, like way
Lake Inuvik,
up.
Prudhoe
Yeah,
Bay,
yeah.
that region.
Yeah, there were stations all along there. Well, looking over towards Russia, watching out for those guys.
Right,
So this was meant to supply those.
right.
So it's meant to run not on roads, just across the tundra.
Okay.
These giant tires are meant to kind of
Right.
bounce along over everything. One of the issues with trains that don't run on tracks is you got to know where you're going, because it's pretty hard to back that thing up. But as it relates to the Tesla, which I think is interesting, is diesel electric. So this is to some extent diesel electric and with regenerative braking. This technology was first used on trains, like diesel locomotives, and they would have regenerative braking. LeTourneau, who created this, took the way the power was created with diesel locomotives, and he separated them. So each of these tires are electrically driven.
So it's like one of the first hybrids.
It is exactly one of the first hybrids. So it had regenerative braking, and it would create enough power that it would store in a battery in this front section, which would power its ignition to start it up.
Wow.
So I don't think it would run with that stored power, but it would use
Right.
it for its ignition. So it's
Okay.
a very early Prius.
What? In what year?
This
Would
is
this be?
early 1950s.
1950s. They had that technology.
I have a letter which is from some high up U.S. military about how they were going to put a reactor in here, because that was also a really reasonable form of electricity generation in the 50s, right? Vehicles driven by nuclear
Power?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were going to put a reactor in there. There were smaller cars during the 50s that were running on that, not in the Yukon. I think they were called like the Fusion, and it was those kind of names.
Wow,
That's
okay.
when they were doing that electron gardening. It's
See,
like weird.
I didn't know that.
There's all kinds of weird Cold War nuclear. People got all excited about it.
There's a
because it
lot
was the
of
cleanest,
history.
best kind of energy until it has its problems.
Right.
Yeah. These tires might look familiar. If anybody knows, I think it was in 80s and 90s that that kind of mud bog, whatever, big wheeled truck called
Right.
Bigfoot. It used tires from one of these guys. Bigfoot.
Yes, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It was in a movie, I think.
Yeah.
An old 80s movie.
Yeah.
There is a lot of history in transportation that most of us don't know.
Well, do you know what the coolest thing about transportation is? Is it really tells us a lot about ourselves. It tells us how we connect to each other. I mean, why the heck are people transporting stuff around? Generally, it's for reasons of love, right? Or things like greed, or things like necessity, or
Right.
it's all those very human emotions, and it comes to play, like the stories come out in transportation. Well,
Right.
it comes out in anything.
So
Get into
basically,
any kind of history and you fall down the rabbit hole, and it's awesome.
it boils down to the amygdala, the part of the brain which is for love, food, like greed, all that stuff, the emotions.
Yeah.
The way I remembered it is one professor said, just remember the 4 F's: food, fight, flight, and sex.
Yeah, that's right. That's transportation for
that's
you.
the
All
amygdala.
summed up.
And so that's transportation. I never thought about that, but
and
yeah,
it comes out in all
to
kinds
transport
of forms.
food, and
yeah.
I didn't think about the romantic things, romantic getaways, or going to see your love from a distance.
Yeah.
You have to drive there or take a horse there, whatever the transportation was at that time.
Yeah.
They had to figure out a way to get there.
Well, if you think, like, transportation is moving people, their things, and their ideas
Right.
across the landscape, so that includes things like mail. Or
Right.
like texting,
Right, exactly.
or whatever kind of.
Yeah.
And why? And yeah, that big answer. Why do people do that?
Transportation was the main source of communication
Yeah.
before phones, before anything else.
Yeah.
They had to get there in person somehow, either with a product, a letter, or in person.
Yeah.
Interesting.
First, you had to walk your voice somewhere.
Started with the range in 1994, 93, and it took me 4 years to get my junior ranger started when they started up, and now we got over 30, almost 40 now maybe at home in Kovaluktuk.
Okay.
But to take the junior rangers up here in Whitehorse, lots of activity going on and stuff like that, whitewater rafting or rescue training. The purpose of the rangers is pretty well looking after the north.
I'm gonna have to part with one of my Elons because I found a better home for him. He's actually gonna stay here in the Yukon with Jenna at the Yukon Transportation Museum.
We've decided that we would like to offer Elon Musk a job as a host interpreter, and he said he would take it. He's dressed up all nicely for his first day at work. So welcome aboard, Elon.
This is absolutely incredible that it's making sense of a road with no painted lines on it, and it's kind of figuring out where it should be. Maybe it's the those marks in the asphalt. It's kind of going back and forth a little bit, trying to find its lane, but it's finding the lane just from the width of the road, I guess. But no painted lines. We're on the Alaska Highway and we're in autopilot, and I'm just monitoring it, and it's holding up pretty good so far.